I want to talk about a few different issues today, but I want to begin with a very urgent one in Sri Lanka, because a British Sri Lankan journalist has been shot in the last few hours and injured severely in the neck. He works for a newspaper that in the past has been quite critical of the Sri Lankan government. The editor was killed some years ago. What's your reaction to this particular shooting?
I'm deeply disturbed by this particular shooting because it's a journalist and he's attached to a newspaper that is known to be critical of the government, particularly on accountability and injustice issues, which are issues that I cover. And I will be reporting to the Human Rights Council my concern over extrajudicial killings, abductions, and this kind of treatment and suppression of freedom of expression. What
do you want the Sri Lankan government now to do about this shooting and about all the other shootings and killings that have been taking place?
You know, in short, let me say they have to be investigated. There has to be credible investigation, and they have to involve the civil society in the kind of institutions and investigations they set up, because if it's done by the government or the police themselves, they do not enjoy the confidence of the people at this stage. They should implement the recommendations of their own LLRC, and that is to hold proper investigations, not military courts, because they do not enjoy the confidence of the people. They're not impartial. The government has set up military courts to look into past killings and violations. All this will be debated in the Human Rights Council in March, because I have filed a report there, once again offering assistance such as investigative expertise and addressing impunity and accountability. And we're also very, very willing to ensure that civil society is geared to play a role there. So, not setting up military tribunals, because they do not enjoy the trust of the people at the moment.
And with regard to this journalist, Faraz Shaukat Ali, he is clearly very vulnerable right now. He has been shot. He's in a Sri Lankan hospital. What should the authorities be doing for him right now?
The authorities should immediately provide protection for him, because whoever tried to kill him obviously was targeting him. So it's an act of attempted assassination. So he needs to be protected immediately.
The trouble is, the truth is, the campaigners believe it was the government who were attacking him, isn't it? If we're being blunt about it. The suspicion is that the Sri Lankan government may have been behind this.
Well, that's why there has to be a proper investigation before we can conclude that. In the meantime, it's law enforcement that has to provide him protection. And it would demonstrate on the part of the government that they care if one of their citizens is fired upon. I mean, everybody should care who are the people who are going around shooting other people. This is what law enforcement is about. You should be ahead to know who are the people behind the killing and shooting of journalists and human rights defenders.
But how can law enforcement work when law enforcement is itself suspected of involvement in the killings of more than a dozen journalists in recent years, of dozens more shootings? I mean, when you call for law enforcement, in practice, that's impossible, isn't it?
Well, that's what they have, and the Sri Lankan government swears by the integrity of their army and their police. Well, it's time they demonstrated that. These institutions built into their democracy must now begin to work properly, and this is an immediate instance where they can demonstrate that.